All right, welcome to another exciting lesson. Build a habit tracker in Notion. Habit tracker has to be one of the most requested features when it comes to building tools in Notion. There are several ways to approach this, and I have personally experimented with several different ways as well. And today I'm excited to share with you some of the tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way and the version that I finally settled on. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so here I am in the Miro board, and I hope by now you're able to get a sense of how we approach building tools in Notion and how we split things between the database and the front end. So just for documentation purposes and to make sure that we have a game plan, let me put a sticky note here and make sure that we have all the requirements captured. So let's add the first requirement, which is to be able to track 6 habits. And of course, this is an arbitrary number, and you can have less habits that you track every day or more. But these are typically things like have you gone to the gym today? Have you meditated? Have you had enough water? So things related to personal habits and self-development and discipline. So of course, the number of habits that you track is going to be a personal number. And the second requirement that we have is we need some kind of a status indicator. So we want to be able to see how we are doing overall for the day. So are we in the red for the day? Are we yellow, or are we good to go and we are in the green zone? So this is just a status indicator. That's all it is. So that we can take a look at a glance and tell how we are tracking for the day. And then finally, the last requirement is to be able to see a progress bar. So this is slightly different than the status is just an overall status, red, yellow, green. Progress, however, is going to be more accurate. Like, have we done 1 out of 6 habits, 2 out of 6 habits, so on and so forth. And we want to be able to see it in a visual way, in the progress bar kind of a manner. So let's add that requirement here as well. Very good. So then when it comes to the metadata, what we need here is basically a way to track these 6 habits. And when we say track, what we want really is to be able to tell whether we have done the habit or accomplished that habit for the day or not. So it's basically a yes or no, true, false kind of a situation. And it's a pretty good candidate for the database field type called a checkbox. So that is exactly what we are going to use. Checkbox field is different than the status field. The status field has more nuance to it, where you can track whether it's backlogged, in progress, or done. Whereas a checkbox is pretty simple. It's just yes, no, true, false, that's it. So we will have 6 of those, 1 for each habit. And then finally, we are also going to track the date, so we know which date we are talking about. And this is also going to be helpful later on for dashboard and different other purposes that we are going to be using the habit tracker for. So we'll have a date field. And finally, we will have a couple of other fields for the status indicator. And of course, we are going to talk about exactly how to achieve this. And the fourth one is going to be for the progress bar. So all of these fields are going to be in the database as independent fields. Very good. So that's the game plan. So we are going to start with this basic setup. As always, we are going to set up our database, add all the fields that we need to our database, and then we are going to move to the front end and build a nice looking front end for our data. Very good. So let's switch over to Notion and build our habit tracker. So here we are on the data page. And the first thing, as always, we need to do is add a database to track our data related to the habits tracker. So I'm going to add another full page database and name it habits DB. And by default, we always get these 2 fields and 3 rows. So we can just select these and delete them. We don't need a tags field for our habit tracker, so we can get rid of this. But instead, what we need is 6 fields to track our habits. So we're going to click on the plus button, and then we can scroll through these. But essentially what we're after is the checkbox field, as I mentioned, so that we can mark our habits as done or not done for the day. So I'm going to pick this one. And the first one I'm going to name habit 1. And then, of course, this can be the actual habits that you are going to be tracking. So let's add that. So now when I add a new row, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get a checkbox, which I can just mark as done or undone based on the status for the habit. And now what I'm going to do is, instead of adding multiple checkboxes, I'm going to just click on habit 1. And there's an option to duplicate the property. So I'm going to duplicate it 5 times. Duplicate it again, duplicate one more, and one last time. So now we have our 6 habits, and now we're going to rename them. So we just click on the field and rename this. Habit 2, click on it again. Habit 3, click here for habit 4, habit 5, and habit 6. There we go. Very good. So now we have the fields that we need to be able to track our 6 habits. And then the only other field we are going to add right now is the date field. We'll come back to status indicator and progress bar once everything has been set up for the basic habit tracker. So what we need to do here is go to the right and then add one more field. And this is just going to be the date field for whenever we are tracking our habits. Very good. So that's all we need for now as far as the database is concerned. The other 2 fields, the status indicator and the progress bar, we will come back to it at a later time. But for now, let's just leave the database in here and move over to the areas page and create a space for our habit tracker. So this is again going to be a page dedicated to the habit tracker or our habit tracker front end, or you can also call it the habit tracker app. So we're going to call it the habit tracker, and we're going to start with an empty page as always. And now that we know we have a special block to be able to link to our database, we are going to make use of that. So we get that by hitting the / key and typing linked, and we get this option for this block called linked view of a database. So we click on that, and then we are going to be presented by all the options that we have in our data. So we are going to select the habits DB for this one. And as always, we are going to create a new empty view because we are creating a specific view for our habit tracker front end, and we want to be able to control it in this particular page. So we click on new empty view, and for the view name, it doesn't really matter, but in this case, we can just call it all habits for now and click on done and get rid of that and then hide the database title so that it's out of the way. First thing we are going to do is we are going to reduce the space here so these habits appear next to each other. So let's bring them close. Let's bring them close as well, as close as possible. But then what's going to happen is you won't be able to see the name of the habit because we want these checkboxes to appear next to each other because they look really cool when you check them off. You can see like the streak building. But with this look, you do lose the name of the habit. So for that, what I recommend doing is you click on the name and actually choose an icon. So more icons, I apologize, but you choose the icon which is most appropriate to that particular habit. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but just wanted to remind you, if you are finding this valuable, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to continue learning more about Notion, you can find the link to the full course in the description below. Now back to the video. So let's say my first habit is drinking water. So I'm going to pick the water droplet here, or you can pick the cup or whatever. So yeah, let's go with this drink. And let's say my second habit is related to exercise. So let's see what we can find for exercise. Do we have a dumbbell or something like that? There we go. And then let's say another one for this one. Let's say I want to walk 10,000 steps every day. So I'm going to pick the walking person. There we go. So now instead of the names, you're able to see the icons, and that will represent which habit is in question under that particular field. Very good. And for the date field, we can actually hide it from here because the only reason we need the date is to be able to track at a later time if you want to see some data, but we don't need to have this in at least a tracker view. So I'm going to hide it in this view. And for the name, we are going to have the same problem, which is every day you come in and you want to track your habits. First of all, you have to think of a name for that day, which is a lot of work. I hate doing that. I just want to be able to track my habits and not have to worry about this name field. And definitely we cannot get rid of it. We cannot change the type of the property. It is always of type title. So it's always there. It's a little sticky, a little annoying, but what can you do? What we can do instead is we can, just like we did for the daily journal, we can create a template for the habit tracker. So if we go here and we click on new template, so for the title, what we can say is habits for, or we can say tracking for the date. So we'll use the @ symbol again, and then we'll say today, which is the date of whenever this template is duplicated. So now, and what I'm going to do is, we didn't do this earlier, but I am going to make this the default template. So just like we edit, we go back here next to the template name, we click on this little icon in the 3 dots menu, and it shows up the option to set it as default. So it will ask me, do you want to set it as default for all views in the habits tracker or just this view? So I'll say go for all views because no matter where I'm creating a new habit from, I'm going to need the same name for it. So let's delete this particular entry, delete. And now if I add a new one, previously when we built the template for the daily journal, we had to go here and then select the morning template or the evening template, because we did not have a default one. Because in that case, we can't have a default one because we never know. Are we journaling in the morning? Are we journaling in the evening? But when it comes to habits, it's always going to be the same. We just need a new entry in the database with our 6 fields so we can check them off, and that's pretty much it. So all you have to do now is click on this empty space or this new button, either way, it doesn't matter, and it will automatically create a new entry with the name tracking for that particular date. So now the date is visible, and then you have all the 6 check boxes, which you can then throughout the course of the day start taking off and track your habits. Very good. So that's all we need as far as the basic setup is concerned. One more thing I'm going to add to this is I'm going to add a bit of filtering, because at a glance, I don't want to see my entire habit history. At a glance, typically I am interested in my habits for that particular week. So first thing we should do is we should go here and update the template so that it automatically adds the date for whenever we create a new entry. So date when duplicated. So this way, when I add a new entry and open it up, my date is already filled in. So January 25th, 2024, which is today. So this way I can do some filtering based on that date. And the reason I want to add a filter is because if it's not filtered, I'm going to see everything that I have in my database, all my habits throughout the history of my habit tracking. But I only want to see something that is more current. I only want to see maybe the current week, because at a glance, I only like to see what I have going on this week and how well I'm doing on my habits in that particular week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a filter. Given that we have a date field now, we can use this property to filter the entries in the database down to the ones that we want to see for this particular view, which is the current week's habits only. So click on filter and select the date field, and it is going to ask me what dates do you want to see. And it's actually pre-selected relative to today, this week. And look at that, nice and clean, starting from Monday all the way to Sunday. So once I apply this filter, I will only see habit entries for that particular week. And this will automatically update every week because it is relative to today. So when I'm on February 1st, it will only show me that particular week, which is from 29th to 4th. So it will keep updating every week. As soon as I enter in the 29th, it is going to show me the next week's entries. Very good. Let's click out of this and let's make sure that our filter is indeed working. So I'm going to add a couple more entries, but these are of course going to be visible because they will all take today's date. But I'm going to clear the date from here so that there's no date associated with them. And I'm going to clear the date with this one as well. There we go. And then finally, we can just go to the habits DB and make sure, okay, so we see 4 entries here. 2 of them have a date and 2 of them don't have a date. Even if we add like a date from a previous week or add a date from the next week, and we go back to our habit tracker, we will only see the 2 entries. And just to make sure we have the right expectation when we are in the habit tracker front end in the habit tracker app, we can rename this to reflect the filter that is in place. So we rename this to this week. So we will know that the table that we're looking at is only going to show us our habits from this particular week. Very good. That's the basic habit tracker. And so far we have been able to meet 2 of the requirements, which is to have a checkbox and a date. And on top of that, we added a template to automatically add a name for each entry of the day. And we also added a filter to only see habit tracking for that particular week and hide everything else behind the scenes. And this will update automatically every week. So that's pretty much it for this one. We are going to stop here. And when we come back in the next one, we are going to work on adding our status indicator and the progress bar. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to access the full course, you can look for the link in the description below or on my website, nocodeuniversity.net. I'll see you in the next one.